The American people got a better idea of just how close the January 6 rioters were to Vice President Mike Pence during the insurrection.
During testimony on the third day of the January 6 committee hearings, it was revealed the mob at the Capitol got within 40 feet from Pence during the attack. Today's hearing focused on former President Donald Trump's pressure on Pence to overturn the 2020 presidential election results. Stephen Maynard Caliendo is a professor of political science and the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at North Central College, and he joins us now to talk about today's hearings. One thing that struck me is Justice Luttig, a conservative, by the way, very, very strong, saying Trump allies are a danger to democracy, saying he would lie in the road to have stopped this from happening, and then saying if Pence had actually made the decision to put President Trump in office again, that it would have been tantamount to a revolution within a constitutional crisis. So from a historical perspective, I want you to tell me how significant this is.
The judge's testimony, Dina, as you said, was so powerful. Part of it was the way he delivered his testimony, very deliberately, very slowly, thoughtfully. And this really was a day for Republicans. It was a day for conservatives. It was a day that we heard from a lot of people who had been conservative and staunch Republicans for a long, long time, saying how dangerous President Trump was in those months, in those weeks, and certainly on that day. And it also was a day, Dina, for history. Lots of discussion of previous vice presidents who had presided over electoral counts, who were also in positions that they would have benefited personally, perhaps. It was a talk about future vice presidents maybe being in those positions and what we would expect of them, all to show that what the president had cooked up that day was an illegal, unconstitutional, unprecedented plan that could not withstand legal scrutiny and was also very offensive to many of his own conservative and Republican base.
And what of this, Professor, Vice President Pence refusing to follow the command from President Trump here and refusing to evacuate when we learned today that rioters were just 40 feet from the vice president, all while President Trump was tweeting how Pence had failed the whole movement.
That's right. And Ray, Vice President Pence is coming out of these hearings looking very interesting in terms of his thoughtfulness. It wasn't that he just said, hey, look, we lost. We got to move it along here. He had meetings. He listened. He asked lots of experts for their advice. And he became convinced it seems very early, but very clearly convinced that he did not have the authority to do what the president had asked him to do. And it was inappropriate. It was wrong. And he wasn't going to do it. And then, of course, we hear the news of how close the rioters came to him and see some of the images I hadn't seen before of the vice president, always in his very neatly pressed suits on the loading dock and so forth. Very powerful today.
Do you see any change coming from this? You mentioned they talk about the historical perspective of all of this. You know, it could have been Al Gore, it could have been Richard Nixon doing this. So do you see lawmakers moving to make sure this doesn't happen again, that there's no question?
There probably is always some room to firm up language, to make it a little bit more clear, but it's somewhat ironic because part of what was argued today is that the language has held. 230 years of American presidents and transitions and 150 years of an electoral act that again may have some vague language, but every other vice president did what Mike Pence did and did their duty. And so, do you need specific language? You could have it for sure, but it was really clear that the folks who were testifying today want to make sure this is on the record. One of the things that struck me was Vice President Pence saying that when he was first sworn into Congress, one of the first things he remembers is Vice President Al Gore presiding over that same ceremony where there was a contested election in Florida with the U.S. Supreme Court being involved. And so that even at that moment, that decision of Gore to make had effects 20 years later. And so that's why these hearings are important today.
Just a few seconds left here. What was your overall impression of the impact of this hearing versus the other? And what are you looking for next?
Yeah, I don't know that it was any more impactful than what we heard on Monday or even what we heard last week in prime time. I mean, this is a series of hearings that is designed to make a case about the president's involvement, even in the face of opposition from his own supporters. The questions will be, what will Merrick Garland do with this? Will the president face any criminal implications or people around him? But also then to get it on the public record and maybe change some minds of some folks who continue to support the president and believe either that he won the election or that his plan was appropriate on January 6th.
As always, we appreciate your insight. Thank you, Dr. Stephen Maynard Caliendo.
Good to see you both.
You too.
A major